My first job was at a 24-hour restaurant called Flavy's on 3rd and Burlington in Westlake. It was a real hole-in-the-wall place, the type where patrons line up beneath the menu board, specializing in burgers, gyros, and all-day, grease-heavy breakfast. I worked graveyard shifts. So did most of my customers, the medical crowd. There were 2 middle-sized hospitals nearby, cops, firefighters, and the assorted civil servants that filtered in and out of the neighborhood. A middle-aged LAPD officer used to come by, sometimes with a partner, sometimes alone. Let's call him Officer Carlos Nunez. Officer Nunez didn't look like a cop. If I'd seen him at a grocery store, I'd have thought he was a professor or an attorney or a realtor. He had a square jaw and high forehead, curly brown hair, an endearing bald spot, and the friendly diplomatic face of a sitcom dad. Officer Nunez had stories. On lazy nights, he could entertain his audience for hours. That audience consisting of Eagle Scout-looking fire babies, bored security guards, and nursing students off clinical shifts. 30 years with a badge and a car had given him plenty of material. When there were no kiddies to impress, he talked to me. Some of his stories were pretty dark. He saved those stories for the coldest, windiest nights when Flavy's was empty, save for him and me and the cooks. Though it was nearly a decade ago, what he told me on one of those nights still lingers in the back of my mind. "There's a building," he started, "less than a mile from here, near 6th and Alvarado. It was abandoned, repossessed by the bank. They should have bulldozed the dump." It had been low-income housing, the Primrose Apartments. Officially office space, the building was bought at auction in 1999, gutted, and divided into cheap little white-walk units where the roofs leaked and the air conditioning never worked. In the early 2000s, Nunez was dispatched to the Primrose every couple of weeks, for the reasons one would expect: domestic disturbances, possession with intent to sell, drunken brawls in the parking lot, solicitation, truancy, noise complaints. Nothing out of the ordinary for a public housing complex lodged within the bowels of a major city. Yet somehow, embarrassingly, the building played on his nerves. "I never liked the place," he told me. "It was creepy. No building erected in the 70s has the right to be as creepy as that one." If he had been asked to put a finger on the epicenter of this innate creepiness, he'd have pointed to a little closet on the first floor. The way he described it was, coming from the back entrance, which only employees and cops ever used, a left turn would take you down a double set of doors, through which the elevator lobby and leasing office were accessible. A right turn would lead down a narrow hallway, past the janitor's storage, to a dead end. The little closet in question was opposite the janitor's. The door was unlabeled, innocuous, and should have functioned as glorified wallpaper. But for Nunez, who'd stumbled upon the closet while looking for a restroom, even a glance towards it filled him with irrational dread. A funny smell lingered about the door. He'd catch a faint tendril of that stench every time he walked through the back door. One night, Nunez and his partner, a lady cop who went by Rusty, were dispatched to the Primrose to investigate a domestic disturbance, a man threatening his girlfriend with a butcher knife. They found the woman locked in the bathroom and the boyfriend pounding on the door. Let's call the woman Marisol and the man Modesto. Nunez and Rusty managed to cajole the pair into cooperating. Rusty stayed in the bathroom with Marisol. Nunez sat in the kitchen with Modesto. Modesto claimed that Marisol was cheating on him with her ex-husband. He'd seen the ex hanging around the elevator lobby. When quizzed on the subject, Marisol insisted Modesto was crazy. Yes, she was still friendly with her ex-husband, but it was solely for the sake of their son. She had no desire to sleep with him, and besides, the ex-husband lived in Washington. It was suggested that Modesto had seen a man who resembled Marisol's ex. He got defensive. He strode into Marisol's son's room and came out with a framed picture, the son with his arm around a taller, better-looking man. "I gotta see this shit every day," he ranted to Nunez. "You don't think I'd recognize this asshole if I saw him?" It took a while, but Modesto calmed down and admitted that he may have been mistaken. Marisol didn't want to press charges, and the couple was left in peace. 2 weeks later, Nunez and Rusty were called to the exact same apartment for the same reason. This time, Marisol was barricaded in the master bedroom and Modesto was brandishing a tire iron, insisting he'd had an enraging conversation with her ex-husband in the lobby. "You fucked him," he screamed. "He told me. He said that you fucked him on our fucking bed." Backup was called. 30 minutes later, Modesto was cuffed, sobbing, to a chair, while Marisol tearfully paced on the phone with her ex-husband, trying to prove he hadn't been hanging out in the lobby of the Primrose. "There!" she cried finally. Triumphantly, she'd pulled up a picture on her phone and shoved it in Modesto's face. She handed the phone to Nunez. It was of the man from the picture, her ex-husband, standing by a City of Wenatchee street sign, holding a copy of the Wenatchee World with the day's date. "No way he flew here, fucked me, and then flew back to Washington in time to take this picture." Modesto was asked to elaborate. Maybe he was the butt of a cruel trick. He said he'd been alone in the elevator lobby, checking his mail. The ex-husband stealthily came up behind him, and then described, in graphic, excruciating detail, what he and Marisol had done while Modesto was at work. This time, Modesto was more difficult to pacify. He'd been suspicious for months. He told the cops. He knew the ex-husband had attempted to reconcile with Marisol. He was uncomfortable with their amicable relationship. And it didn't help that Marisol used her ex to stroke Modesto's jealousy. She'd call him up whenever the two of them got into a fight, and constantly talked about how good a father and provider he was. Finally, they came to a resolution. Modesto went to stay with his brother. Marisol agreed to lock the doors, and a police car was dispatched to the neighborhood in case the ex-husband reappeared, or Modesto got cute. Nunez didn't know what to make of the two of them. Modesto was obviously paranoid, but his fury and grief had been sincere. Marisol may have used her ex-husband to make her current beau jealous, but she'd seemed legitimately mystified by the accusations of infidelity. And Nunez highly doubted the ex-husband would have hopped on a plane to Los Angeles just to fuck his ex-wife and stick it to her new boyfriend. And then there was the man in the elevator lobby. The man who might have been in the elevator lobby. Nunez and Rusty passed him on the way back to their squad car. The man, leaning against the wall, face buried in a newspaper. Nunez saw the man and registered what he was seeing, but it took his subconscious a minute to process the information. Then realization of what he'd seen and its implications hit him like a ton of bricks, and he ran back through the back entrance, back through the double doors, but the man was gone, and Nunez was left to wonder whether or not it had all been his imagination, because he could swear the man had been reading a copy of the Wenatchee World.